I would not start a Facebook group to drive sales solely.
Often the biggest businesses are built during downturns. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the eCommerce Influence Podcast. My name's Austin Brawner.
And I'm Lily Ackerley.
And I am fired up to have Lily here. Lily is going to be a mainstay on this show going forward. Lily has an extensive e-commerce background. She was at Free Fly Apparel for about a little over 5 years and went from employee number 2 through a massive growth cycle where she became the e-commerce senior manager, leading all things digital and marketing, and also has a massive background in customer service and customer support because she led that team before transitioning over to marketing, and now works with us and answers questions. Leads marketing here at Brand Growth Experts, answers questions in the membership, works with clients, and is a wealth of e-commerce knowledge. So I'm pumped to have you on the show today and also for the last few episodes and in the future.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So today we'll do a Q&A episode from questions we've gotten inside the membership.
Yep. So these questions come from both the forum and also some of our office hours calls that we have. And we've got a bunch of different topics that we're going to cover for you today. So Austin, why are we talking about this?
Well, it's kind of a crazy world right now. And it feels like every single week things get a little bit crazier. A lot of these things impact the e-commerce world. So we wanted to go in and pull some of the questions that we thought were most interesting recently from the membership and just share it out. Our whole mission with this podcast is to provide results for free so that you guys might think, all right, this is wonderful. They're providing so much value for you guys for free that maybe you'll come in and join our community and get a little bit more in-depth behind the scenes access. So that's our goal, is to share what's happening in the membership with the greater community.
Yep. And hopefully you guys will walk away with something that you can take action with today as well. So some of the stuff that we are going to cover today, we're going to touch on the state of e-commerce. We're going to share some tips from Facebook, kind of what's working over there. And we're also going to talk about some strategies for working with investors or partners in your business.
So yeah, we'll be going kind of deep into our take on what's happening in e-commerce right now, and give you some tips that are actually working on Facebook. So things that are actually working right now in a dismal time. And then if you have signed contracts in your business with partners or thinking about raising money in the future, we'll share what we know, what's worked for us, and some knowledge. So with that, I think you guys are going to like this episode. If you're interested, you can try out the membership for 7 days for just $1. If you'd like to get access to this forum where we have all these questions answered every single day, we have a bunch of trainings. It's a really awesome community. You can go check it out at brandgrowthexperts.com/membership. So without any further ado, let's bring the main content of the episode.
Cool. So first question is going to be for you, Austin. This is something that we've been talking about both in the membership and on Twitter, and I think is top of everyone's mind right now, is just overall, how are people feeling about their businesses right now? Are they optimistic, pessimistic? What's going on there?
Yes. So am I optimistic? Am I pessimistic? How do I think about this? So generally, I'm a really optimistic person, and I think that's one of my superpowers, is to be very, very optimistic. I have a great quote from one of the first people I ever worked for. He said, "They don't build statues of pessimists," and that stuck with me. And I was like, "That's true. They don't build any statues of pessimists." So I think generally, I'm an optimistic person. So I'll frame it in that perspective. What's interesting right now is we have all these external factors happening, external factors that are impacting the e-commerce space. And you can almost look at the trajectory of the Shopify stock as something that's traced kind of the headwinds or tailwinds and headwinds of the e-commerce space. So I don't know if you've been following, but Shopify stock went up to about $1,700 a share and then dropped to around $500 a share in the last 4 or 5 months. And I look at that as kind of a tracing of tailwinds and then headwinds. Tailwinds coming from COVID and everything being pushed online. Outsized returns that came from having a lot less competition out there for services and all these different things, and people growing their businesses very fast. And then headwinds that came from the reverse of this, which was Facebook kind of cracking down on data and the algorithm not working as well, and then increased competition from the rest of the world, right? Restaurants, all these different things. And also people just bringing forward a lot of their sales, right? Say you have a company like Peloton, for example, you're not going to buy multiple Pelotons. You're going to buy one Peloton. Once you do that, you're done. So how do I feel right now, whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic? I'm generally quite optimistic about the future. I think in the short term, things are choppy, and we're going to see continued pressure on the supply chain. And I don't think it's going to. I've listened to a bunch of interviews talking about the state of the supply chain and how we're going to continue to have challenges with the supply chain over the next year and a half. So I think that's still going to impact a lot of business owners. What I've seen recently, what I think is interesting, is I think we're in a new paradigm, kind of. And I was having a conversation with a client, a guy named Jeff Vogel, today, and we were talking about like the future of like what e-commerce looks like. The arbitrage era of Facebook is kind of coming to an end, at least right now. We're taking a pause. I'm not going to officially declare that it's over, but paid traffic is a lot more challenging than it was. And so the shift in where things are going is to an organic traffic first world. If you want to continue to maintain profits in your business and maybe outsized profits compared to other industries, you got to be dominant in organic traffic, because a lot of what has worked is not working nearly as well. So I'm optimistic for businesses that take this time of choppiness, geopolitically, in the supply chain, and invest in organic traffic going forward. I think those are the people that are going to win. Often the biggest businesses are built during downturns when there's less pressure. You can kind of grind away for a couple of years and build something that is sustainable. So I am long-term optimistic, short-term pessimistic. I think that we're going to go through some sort of a correction in the financial markets that's going to be pretty nasty. And we're also have an imminent threat of like a hot war with Russia. And I think we're almost, I would almost consider ourselves already in some form of war with Russia. It's an economic war, and we don't know what the consequences are from that. I think there's a lot of people that look at what's going on right now and applaud a lot of companies for taking action against Russia, whether that's Visa. I think Visa and MasterCard both pulled out of Russia and stopped people from conducting business. And then there's been a slew of other companies that have said we're going to shut things down in tech companies. I think it's too early to tell.
McDonald's, I think, both pulled out too. So.
Subway and McDonald's?
Starbucks and McDonald's.
Starbucks, yeah.
Yeah, both shut down, yeah.
So it's very interesting because this is one of the first times where we have corporations having an impact in foreign policy. And I think it's too early to tell what is going to happen from this, right? Whether woke capitalism is going to push us into a conflict or help us avert a conflict. And I think there's a lot of momentum on the side of people thinking, oh, this is all good stuff. But my fear is that it leads to a population that feels victimized, isolated by the West, and reacts in a more volatile way. So that's the looming short-term pessimism that I have. Is I'm actually not sold that a lot of these corporate sanctions are actually going to lead to the outcome that we're looking for. And, you know, we have a little bit of history from that. We have World War II was one of the catalysts for World War II was the German people feeling frustrated with the sanctions from the West and being swept up into a fervor by Hitler, kind of using the pain that they felt economically to create a more powerful position for himself. And the similar thing kind of happened in Japan, where some of the sanctions that were put on Japan led them to feel like they had kind of no choice but to be able to take action. So that's where my short-term negativity comes. It's around decisions that have been made at kind of a government and corporate level. So a very long-winded answer there. There's a lot going on right now.
There's a lot going on right now, and I think that's why we wanted to do an episode like this. And I think, for smaller brands that are listening that may feel a little bit overwhelmed by all of that, I think one of the big points that you said right there is like, now is a time to focus on organic traffic, put your head down. And I think brands that are able to build loyal customers will survive and will do well here. And I think like there's a big topic on Twitter right now of brand marketing versus direct marketing and what does that actually look like? But I think really being clear with your mission and your brand is how you ride a wave like this, where there are so many uncertainties and unknowns and things completely out of our control.
And I think at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff I was talking about from a bigger picture, right? Like a lot of the stuff going on in Ukraine and in Europe, it's one of those things. It's like something that you can't control, right? So at the end of the day, you have to like come back to the things that you can control. And how would you feel if you spent all your time worrying about something happening in Ukraine and it resolved peacefully, and you took that time away from building something that's going to help you in the future, aka like your business, right? So at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff comes back to, in my mind, it's like, what can you control? What can you not control? As far as the brand marketing side of things and the brand versus direct marketing, I think like often in times of recession and challenge, a lot of the brand marketing gets cut. And you go back to the things that actually work and that move the needle. And if you're feeling stressed at all, it's like that's the framework to go through in your head, right? Which is what's actually moving the needle here, and can we cut everything else?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my take on the state of e-commerce. I'd love to hear from you guys on Twitter as well.
We're recording this on March 9th, and it's going to come live in a couple weeks. So there may be a lot of things that changed when this is live. So just to let everybody know, it's March 9th as you're saying this today.
So question for you, Lily, is around Facebook communities. What do you think, right? So Facebook communities have been popular for a long time.
Yep.
And you're talking about specifically groups.
Yes.
Yes. So really Facebook groups, communities. What do you think? Is it worth creating one right now? I know you've been kind of diving into this. What's your take?
Yeah, so this has come up with a few members recently trying to, I think, look at what you were just talking about. What are some ways to drive more organic, free traffic and build loyalty with customers? So is a Facebook group worth it or not? And I think, as with everything, it's really going to depend on the brand, but it can be a really valuable tool. But it's really important to understand your audience first. So if your audience is not using Facebook or they're not in other groups, they're not going to join a Facebook group just to communicate with you. So I would really do that research first and find out if your current customers are already engaging with groups and are active Facebook users, then this could be a tool for you. And then the other piece of that is go into it with a really clear purpose and reason for starting a community. I would not start a Facebook group to drive sales solely. Like ideally, in a perfect world, it is going to increase your revenue because it's going to increase your brand loyalty. But if you start a Facebook group and start pushing sales in there, nobody's going to want to talk to you or communicate with you. It's really a platform and tool for loyalty and conversation. So I'm going to start with a couple cons and then I'll finish with the positives.
Cool.
But I think one of the biggest cons is you have to have the time and ideally a person that is going to manage this and be in there every day, because if you have people engaging and talking to you, you need to respond to them. And then also, in order to keep the community active, you need to have some topics and things that you're putting in there regularly, whether that's a competition or just, talking to people. You need somebody in there managing that. I recently joined a Slack group for a loyalty program for a brand, and it was just incredibly awkward because no one was engaging with anyone. So it can go very bad if you don't have someone managing it. So don't start it if you don't have the time and you don't have the person to do it.
Yeah.
Something else to keep in mind, I think, is that if you do this, and this comes back to having a clear purpose and reason, it's going to be a very specific segment of your customers that join this group. So if you are looking to collect data from a Facebook group for something like product development, I would be cautious there. And actually, we have an episode, Austin, that you talked to Kevin Hillstrom a few months ago, and that would be a good one to go back and listen to because he talks a lot about customer data. And if you're only getting data from a certain segment of your customers, it can skew your results. And if you were to develop a product, it could go very wrong because you're only listening to the select few of your customers who are your VIPs, and then none of your new customers actually want that product that you just spent a lot of time and money to develop. So just keep in mind as you're thinking about that purpose and reason, the people that are engaging with you here are probably your VIPs, which is a good thing, but maybe don't make a ton of decisions based on that data. And then in terms of pros, I think where this can really shine is it can be a really awesome spot to get some UGC and reviews from your customers. You can run competitions for engagement. There's all kinds of fun stuff that you could do to get people to be sharing content and talking about your products on there that then you can go and use in emails or other paid channels. And then, as we've been talking about, this is essentially a free organic channel where you can get in front of your best customers. So it's a great opportunity to do product launches, promotions, any campaign you can put in there. If you do have an active community, it's going to be a great spot. And that's where you can start seeing an impact on your revenue from this. And then overall, it's just going to help you communicate with your customers. I think humans are eager to have connection, and we want to feel good about where we are spending our money. And I think, as what Austin was just talking about, that's going to become more and more important to people. If they are tightening their wallets, they're going to want to spend their money where they feel good about it. And so if you have that ability to talk to people and be a real human in front of them, chances are they're going to come back to you.
One of the best uses that I've seen of a Facebook group is in the crafting world. And we have a client who they have a crafting product that people buy, and then it's valuable to watch other people do it, right? And so they have a big Facebook group that when people join, they bring in like celebrity crafters into their group and then have them live stream. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really unique and drives a ton of their sales because it's like at the end of the day, where the question is this a value add for your people, right? And
yeah,
that's clearly a value add because people want to see them, these people crafting. It's the only place they can see them. They can watch it, get inspired. And then the other person that I know does really well is company named Constantly Varied Gear. They have a big Facebook group where they provide workout programming every single day in that group. So they sell workout equipment or workout clothing, and they provide on a daily basis value through that group. And I think that's a good framework to think about when you're thinking about your group. Like, do you have a way to provide value?
Yeah, and I think, do you have a way to put content in there that is related to your brand, but isn't just pushing your products?
Exactly.
So that could be, if you have
are you a bike company?
Brand, you can put
do you have bike content?
Yep.
That might work, but
yep. Yeah, you really have to have the right product, I think, and it's not going to work for everybody. So before going and doing it, just evaluate, do some research, maybe even talk to some of your customers if you can.
Cool.
All right. So moving on to our third question, something that's been coming up as people kind of look at different models to bring in more cash and opportunities. Some members have been asking for tips if they're looking to bring an investor into their business or working with a partner to give them a little bit more financial flexibility. So what do you have to say about that, Austin? What are your thoughts there?
Well, so I'll be honest. There's some good answers in the membership. I'll share from my experience. The question was related to, anyone having experience with buying or selling operating agreements with a business partner or an investor. And I take this, right, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, and I don't have any great tips related to buying and selling operating agreements. But what I do have are some tips related to a partnership and successful like contract and negotiating around agreements. I think it's most important to remember if you're thinking about either taking somebody on as an investor, forming a partnership, negotiating any contract, is that there are two humans on each side of that contract. And more important than how the contract is written, it's that the people come to terms and agree about what they want and then go to lawyers. This is the way that I think about it, right? Like, I would much rather come together with somebody who I want to form a partnership with and figure out what's important to both of us. Get really, really clear before we write anything, before we go to any lawyer, before we talk to anybody. Get really clear about what's important to us and what success looks like for each person. Once that's totally, totally clear and that is agreed upon in principle, then it's easy to go to people who are professionals and like to a lawyer and have them actually write up the agreement. But generally, I like to go in, talk to some of my people, right? Thinking about what's important in an agreement, not necessarily a lawyer. Although, you might want to have a little bit of an understanding there. But at the end of the day, I don't want to go into a contract negotiation with both sides, like having the lawyers talk. It's going to take forever. Everyone's going to lose. And at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter if you get all the meat off the bone. You don't want to get all the meat off the bone. You'd rather leave some on for both sides so that both people feel good about an agreement. And if you're bringing on an investor, you just want to make sure that you are happy with the best case and worst case scenario, right? Map that out in your mind and say, well, if the worst case happens, am I happy with that agreement? And if the best case happens, am I still happy with it? I think often it's easy to think about only one case and not prepare for the other scenario. And if you don't prepare for the other scenario, then it makes it really, really, really hard. Also, hire a good attorney to finalize the document. I've hired cheap attorneys and I've hired good attorneys that are a little bit more expensive. At the end of the day, usually the good attorneys that cost more end up being a bargain if anything goes wrong. Yeah. So that's my tip.
Advice. Cool. So I think we want to kind of not shift gears totally, but the next two things that we want to talk about are more just strategies instead of question. I just kind of want to have an open conversation around them. The first one is another Facebook tip for people that are struggling there. And this one is around Facebook shops. So I don't know how much time you spend on Facebook personally, Austin.
0.
Yeah, I didn't think so. But Facebook...
Shopping on Facebook, very little.
Well, people are doing it. And it's, again, this is something, think about your audience. And if they're on these platforms, it's available on both Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. But Facebook is they're putting a lot of time and money into this platform right now. Because of the challenges that they've been having with the algorithm since iOS. We don't need to go into that here, but I do think that this is an opportunity right now, especially if you're somebody that has had success with Facebook ads in the past. And there's kind of two ways that you can do this, but I will say first, they've made some major updates. So if you originally kind of looked at Facebook Shop when they first integrated with Shopify, it was not very pretty. And you should go back and look at it again because it really is. They've cleaned it up just within the last few weeks. I think they've made some major updates and it's pretty nice. And it looks like a collection page and it looks like a PDP. And you have two ways. You can either take payment directly on Facebook or you can send them to Shopify and they would check out on your page. Obviously, that's another click. But I have heard, I don't know if they're doing this for everyone, but I think that they're waiving merchant fees. So if you have a Facebook rep and you're interested in it, you should definitely talk to them because they might waive merchant fees for you to try the platform. That's how hard they're pushing it right now.
Cool. I mean, it kind of makes sense from a strategic perspective for Facebook. Like they want to keep everything on their platform so that they can collect data, improve their ad platform on their platform for anybody, deliver ads and have more data to make it more effective. So it does make sense that they're pushing this. And they have a pretty good track record of delivering on some things. They will make it work, I think. They'll make a way to make money.
In some way, yeah.
Pretty, but.
And this could be, someone's opportunity to cash in on that a little bit, even if it just works for the short term and you get your merchant fees waived for the next couple months and it works. I will also say, you still own your customer data. So It's not like Amazon. You still get their email address. You still get everything, and it pushes the orders right in through Shopify. So in terms of operations, it's all the same. And they're really trying to make it as easy as possible, specifically for Shopify store owners. So it's worth checking out, I think, if you haven't already, or even if you did in the past. They've made some updates, so it's worth trying again. Cool. And then the second thing that I want to touch on, because this has come up in a lot of different places, is quizzes and using those for lead capture. So I think there's a bunch of brands that are doing this really well right now, but this also kind of plays into the loss of data and having less information on customers. Quizzes is a really good way to not only engage your customer and get them to spend more time on your site if they haven't bought from you before, but it also can provide value to them by allowing them to self-select what they're interested in, and you can either feed them a specific product. I've seen brands do bundles at the end of a quiz, or even a sales video if it is a more expensive product. I think V-Shred is one. They have a really good. Do you know who V-Shred is?
Is it like a?
It's like a fitness they sell online fitness classes.
Okay, and this diet guy's training. Ads are everywhere.
His ads are everywhere. Yeah. But his quiz, I would definitely go to V-Shred just to take the quiz and walk through it. And he has a really solid sales video at the end, and it really makes you want it, and it tells you exactly here's your plan. They're selling diet supplements and things like that, but it gives you a plan and personal information. Yeah, Austin's pulling it up. So if you're watching
a YouTube video,
you'll be able to see it. But there's lots of other more e-commerce brands that are doing it really well too. And I think the key is to make sure that whatever data you're asking in that quiz feeds back into your email provider so that you can create segmented audiences to reach out to people later.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good quiz where it kind of gives you an idea of. I love this stuff. It's super interesting to me to see how people are figuring out how to retain information, just because it's so valuable, right? It's so valuable to know how people found you, a little bit more about them, so you can sell them, deliver their needs. We did a really a great whole breakdown in the membership of how to install a quiz funnel for super cheap, right? How to create one and put it on your website using for a couple $10 or $20 a month. And and it's one of those things that allows you to collect data, push to Klaviyo, follow up with people. And then the bundle side of things is really interesting, right? If you can ask people it's when you think about it from the perspective of a store, right? If you go to any store, what's the first thing that they ask you? How can I help you today? And then they ask you about what you want, and then they kind of filter down and help you deliver what you're looking for. That's kind of the idea of a good quiz, is just to ask people what they're looking for and then help them deliver on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's value for you as the brand owner, and it's also valuable for the customer because it gets them to what they need and want faster as well.
And one thing to think about though, when you're putting together a quiz, and this is a quiz or a subscription program, but ask yourself, is this quiz a company centric or customer centric? A lot of times people, especially on the subscription side of things, there's a lot of businesses that run subscriptions as a company benefit, not a consumer benefit. And the same thing can be said about surveys, right? What I mean by that is there are certain companies that their whole model is to like what's it called? Dirty Lemon. I don't know if you guys know. Do you know Dirty Lemon, that water company?
Yep.
Okay, so their subscription business is entirely company centric. You can subscribe and save, and you get, I don't know how much it is, 15, 20% off. But if you want to cancel, in very, very fine print, they say if you subscribed and saved, you can't cancel until the second order. So if you don't like it, you are going to get another order of these things. And what happens if you don't like their stuff and then they ship you another order? Well, you're never going to buy from them again. That was my experience. I was like, I don't really like this stuff. And now you're forcing me to have another shipment of it.
Going.
And that leaves like a really negative taste in your mouth. And the same thing can happen with quizzes.
Is that literal with Dirty Lemon?
What's that?
Is that literal with Dirty Lemon?
Yes. And so that same thing can happen with quizzes. So when you're designing it, just think like, is this something that's useful only for me, or is it helpful for them as well?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. You want people to feel good about it and not forced into something. Good point. Cool. Well, we can start. Do you have any final points or start to wrap up?
No, I think this is good. I mean, let us know if you want, if you like this episode. I mean, if you like this and you want more ideas, if you want to go kind of behind the scenes, join the membership. This is where all these questions come from. We're talking about this stuff every single day. We've got monthly office hours, and we bring in really awesome people every single month to share like what's working in e-commerce right now. We also have little mini mastermind sessions with other members. So check it out. Yeah. You can go to brandgrowthexperts.com/membership. And again, it's $1 for your first 7 days. You can connect with all the other e-commerce owners and experts there. So go check it out.
Yeah, we'd love to see you guys there and have some conversations with you face to face. So cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Austin. We'll see you next time.
See you guys in the next episode.